So I'm originally from Israel. I'm very well traveled and I've been very lucky in that. So I currently live in Scotland, where it's nice and beautiful and green, and there are lots of enchanted Gothic ruins of castles and mossy trees and lots of land to explore, which I love because I like to go hiking and I like to see the Highlands. I actually started out as an opera singer. I studied in the Jerusalem Academy of Music, and after that I went and sang in churches in Berlin, which is kind of great because it's just like singing in the bathtub. And then I spent about a total of 10 years in music, and I nailed this amazing audition, and I knew I was going to sing Haydn's Creation, double solo role in a church in Berlin, and it suddenly hit me that I could never go further. So with my voice, it's a very complex piece, both musically and vocally. After this, I could do something that's sort of around the same level, maybe in a bigger place, but I can't go any further. And I really wanted to try something in business, and I thought, well, wouldn't it be great if I got to go to a really big university? And I got to go to Oxford with a scholarship. And then one day I wanted to go traveling, and I asked one of my friends, and she said, oh, you should go to Scotland. And just fell in love with this place. It's amazing here. So funny fairy tales are a lot more like an app than they are a book, and it's kind of more of an experience of playing with it, and it's fun. So it's like a long time ago, swipe left, in a faraway land, swipe left, there lived a mirror named Shragam, in the case of Snow White, which was the first one. And they're more something that you play with when you're waiting for the train or the bus or the plane. And they have moral concepts that are more modern and suitable for our time. So, for example, in Snow White, it's about talent. It's about the talent of Snow White. She's not beautiful, she's smart, and the dwarfs are smart, so the dwarfs each have a phenomenal profession that they are exceptional at. And with Cinderella, it's a bit more about courage. It's about this girl who needs to relax and get out and have an adventure. And in Red Riding Hood, it's a lot more about reputation, which I think today is a lot of it has to do with how online we are and how digital we are. So it used to be in the past that if something happened, you could just move to a little town a couple of miles away and probably no one would know. And now it's more that if something happens, then you're recognizable anywhere and it's online. And in my story, both Red and the Wolf have to deal with this problem. So it actually started about a few years ago when I was babysitting one of my best friend's kids, and she wanted me to tell her a story. So I thought, okay, I'm going to tell her the story of Snow White. And then I thought, well, do I really want it to be about beauty and about how that's such a conflict between the women? So I made Snow White ugly, but smart and very, very talented. And then when it came to the dwarfs, I thought, wow, how boring and how biased are 7 dwarfs. So I thought, hey, why don't we practice the professions that she knows? So one of them was a doctor. The other one was a chef. And she loved it and she wanted to hear it over and over again. And one day I come home and I think to myself, well, you know, why don't I make like a funny adult version and send it to one of my friends in an email? And that is how Snow White got started. And then a few months ago, just, you know how it is when you're just falling asleep and it's like that last little idea coming in. I thought, wow, what if I did this? And I wrote it on a little note, and I woke up the next morning and there was the note, and I thought, yeah, let's do that. And I think this was a great like story of how you fail forward fast. So the first time I just did it completely wrong, and I actually did that, and then I wrote Cinderella, and then I was wondering about doing the formatting because this is completely new to Kindle, so it's not something that they already have. And then someone told me, well, you should start with iBooks. I said, okay, let's do that. And I got it wrong. Like, I just really got it wrong. And then about a week later, I decided that I'm totally going for this. And I wrote 9 millionaires, 9 women who have sold millions of copies online. And 4 of them replied, yeah, well, try. And you don't try, never find out. And one of them sent me to a book that did not just have the instructions of what they were doing, it had the names of all the people they were working with. And one, I immediately saw my mistakes and started remedying them, and then I remedied them with the best of the best. So I knew that I was getting an amazing formatter when my formatter replied. I knew that I was getting an amazing copy editor. And I'm very thankful. Thank you, Jacinda Wilder, for giving me the reference to that book. That has been amazing, and you are an amazing author. Really, thank you. And I love your story. I love how you started out and what you did. So yeah, that's how I got started. And Kindle were amazing with their support. They were very excited about this new idea of how to do a book. Because obviously it's not the same as other books. It's a little bit more of an app, and it really uses exactly that digital platform to do it. So thank you, Kindle. What I think is special there again is that Snow White is ugly. She's not this great beauty, but she has so many other talents. And when she grows up, she becomes plain but exceptional in everything else. And it's more about a generic type jealousy and obviously the queen's obsession with beauty. And that gets challenged by Schlager. Schlager is the mirror, and everybody loves Schlager. Everybody. Schlager is so popular. He's sarcastic, and he basically hates her so badly, and he just wants to go back to his previous owner, and in a way he's that voice of reason in a bit of a funny kind of dark parody way. And I think this is something to be said in general about funny fairy tales. It's about those characters that you notice less in the traditional ones. It's about giving that extra color, that extra breadth to the tale. I mean, we all know the original tale, and I stay very true to the stories because this is what we know, this is what we love. And then my biggest challenge is to color around that. So Cinderella. Well, Cinderella is a bit more of an adventure story. So it's about this girl who has a lot more inside than meets the eye. I mean, if you think about the original Cinderella, Cinderella was ready to go. She had everything she needed, and yes, okay, she would have missed this prince, but she was completely capable. She didn't need the fairy godmother. And by the way, in the Grimm there isn't one, which is nice. It's like there's a tree and birds that give her what she needs, and there also aren't glass slippers, there are gold slippers, and every night it's a different dress because there are 3 of them. And she's a lot more active, actually. There's not one makeover lady that comes over and takes care of things. And in my story there is a makeover lady. There's a very, very special fairy godmother, and I'm not going to give any spoilers. But there's a lot about what it means for someone who is that closed and that secluded to come out in what it takes the challenge of really stepping up and going beyond her limitations. And I think that this is what Cinderella is really about. It's not about dressing up for the night. It's about being stronger and trying out something you haven't tried before. Wow. Red Riding Hood. Red Riding Hood is my favorite fairy tale of all times. It was really, really hard for me to write it. It was the first time I had any blockages whatsoever. I would just come and write and then erase everything and try again. And I think the biggest challenge there was just getting the wolf right. So as a kid, I used to have mega nightmares about wolves, and I would go and I would wake my parents and, you know, there's a wolf. And one day my parents thought, okay, well, why don't we just take her to the zoo and show her a wolf? And now, unfortunately, that was in Israel, where the wolf is anyhow worked for them. Because I came home and I thought, well, yeah, they have no idea what a wolf is, clearly. So I just never disturbed them again. Because I was dreaming about husky type big wolves. And well, for those of you who know the meaning of childhood dreams, you'd understand why it's my favorite fairy tale now, because I think what the wolf truly symbolizes is that sensual, dark, intoxicating place that we search for. I mean, if you think about the different versions of Red Riding Hood, and I try to see all of them. I love it when a new one comes up. I think it's absolutely correct to make it very sensual. I think it's absolutely correct to make it about that tall, dark stranger, but with warmth, which is why I like the Amanda Seyfried version so much, because I think it really covers that. And if you think about what Red was actually instructed by her mother, she never said don't talk to strangers. She just didn't want her straying off the path because she was carrying a bottle of wine to her grandmother. And considering these are the only instructions, and she's, especially in the case of the Grimm, she's a little girl. In my story, she's older. But in the Grimm, she's a girl venturing out on her own into the forest. It's supposed to be half a league, which is about 30, 40 minutes alone in the woods. That's already kind of a story of someone who's not exactly a little girl anymore. So to make that connection to the wolf a bit more substantial, I think is absolutely appropriate and should be done. And I love that Hollywood took that on, so that was nice. So I based the wolf on two men that I met in my life who were an inspiration to me. They were older and wiser. One of them I met recently in a hike. He's a professional hiker, and he's a bit more of a man of the world, someone who's had life and has seen its ups and downs, and can really have that perspective about things. And the other one is someone who used to be my mentor, and he was like a rock. He was someone who could really deal with anything. And in the story, both Red and the wolf have to deal with losing reputation. So in the case of Red, my Red used to be a celebrity, and she loses her place, and the wolf is accused of something he didn't do. And that's a big theme there. And one of these people had that happen to them, and I was so inspired to see with what strength they face that. And it happens a lot to people nowadays, especially with the internet, and especially with everything that goes on that's immediate out there, immediately on social, immediately digital. So I think it's a very appropriate message in our times to think about the value of reputation, and I like to bring that out. So yeah, my favorite fairy tale. I love how it came out. So it was difficult, but it did well. So what makes a fairy tale? Well, I think if you look at traditionally the Grimm and the Disney, it's two things. One, it's a happy ending. 100% promised, guaranteed. One of the few rules that I have to always stick to, I guarantee a happy ending. And the other one is magic. But magic, if you notice in fairy tales, is not something that is extravagant. It's so plain that it's just part of that world. And if you look at the stories, if you think about it, I mean, what is Snow White? Well, it's a poisoned apple and the good disguise, right? What is Cinderella? Well, it's a dress, really, and a method of transportation. And if you start looking at them, I mean, you could even say the Wolf in Red Riding Hood could have been just a person. So there is so much that is not necessary for magic to intervene, and it does anyhow. It does because it's above that basic. It's that extra flavor. It's the chocolate of that world, and that's why we believe it, because it didn't have to happen, but it did. So I can officially say it's Hansel and Gretel. By popular demand. So I ran a poll on Facebook and it reached 200,000 people, and quite a few answered, and so everybody wants Hansel and Gretel. It's already written and it's going to the beta reader quite soon, so it's going to start getting into the more intense editing process. The kick there is obviously the chocolate house with all the candy, and there's a surprise character as the witch, and I can already tell you that Hansel and Gretel have a lovely little brother called Charlie who gets into trouble because he can't stay away from chocolate. So yeah, that's where it's going, and it again links to that world of funny fairy tales, stays true to the basics of the popular stories that we know. Okay, I'm not going to give any spoilers. Just, yeah, coming up next, Hansel and Gretel. Kindle, Nook, iTunes. And if you want to know more about how I write and read the blog, and there's also links directly to the websites where you can buy the books, just go to funnyfairytales.org. There's also more information there about what I'm currently writing and how my writing process is, and Q&As. Noah, thank you. Thank you for allowing me to talk about my favorite subject while you're watching me. And see you soon. Bye.